Alexander, I know from surfing. You know, Luxembourg is a very big surfing nation. It has a wave and is the type of guy who likes surf so much he invented the technology to generate the waves. That type of guy. And he made headlines this weekend when he tried e-foil on the muzzle, going after the biggest boat, crossing just in front of the biggest boat, and then diving under the biggest boat. So a real adventurer. He's also an investor, he's a cyber expert, and he's a friend. Then we have Taylor Wakefield, who is co-founder and COO of Teleport. If you're not familiar with Teleport, it allows engineers to access computing resources anywhere in the world. And then we have Hauke Timmermann. Thank you for being here today, who is going to represent today's Center for Sovereign AI. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us here. Thank you, gentlemen, for participating. So our session will be heavily about cybersecurity, and it's called the New Digital Battlefield. And I would like to start with actually 3 facts that happened in the previous month, which can frame the world where we currently living in. So the first is the US, first ever in history, puts the export controls on AI models, and within, over the night, the most capable anthropic models got dark and appeared again accessible in 3 weeks. Number 2, the Economist reported that in controlled red teaming exercise, same anthropic models were able to compromise nearly all NSA systems within hours, so which is a bit worrying. And the third thing is, during the same weeks, China released open weight models, which is based on independent testing, has or even outperforms capabilities of, again, Anthropic and other public US models in detecting certain type of vulnerabilities in security. And these models are available. No one can revoke it. Everyone can download it, so they are in the wild. So in just 1 month, we've seen that AI has both roles. So one is one of the most serious cyber weapons from one side, potentially, and from another is a critical dependency, which could be revoked over the night. So that's the frame which we'd like to discuss today. And the first question to both of you, gentlemen, is so from your perspective, what are the most significant risks that organizations are underestimating today?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of publicity, to your point, around Mythos and how that getting in the hand of bad actors is a dangerous thing. What we're seeing is, I would say, a risk as well, where enterprises are deploying AI agents willfully in their organization, and these agents comprise of what Simon Willison, who's a famous developer in the Bay Area, calls a lethal trifecta. So these are unpredictable or non-deterministic code. They have access to your private data. They also have access to untrusted content, which can influence their actions, and they have access to external entities. All those 3 things will create a ton of new vectors of attack into these enterprises, right? And the enterprise are not ready to defend themselves against this. So I think that along with the incentives of these enterprises having to deploy AI as fast as they can to get the productivity gains, the incentives create a dangerous environment.
Thank you. Hoke, your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think it's something that has to be taken very seriously, like mentioned before, and I think especially also for a critical infrastructure, that's a very severe thing, that there could be a risk of power failures and water failures and all these kind of things that can really affect our lives, our daily lives, or where actually an attack could really have really strong effects on our personal lives. Even if you switch on your faucet and there's no water anymore, then I think that's a great risk.
Yeah, thank you. Taylor, your company operates on the intersection of infrastructure, identity, and access. So from your point of view, why right now identity is becoming one of the major challenges in security in the AI era?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of identity security came about with the last major technology wave, which was the movement of the cloud to the cloud, right? And so the scale of what's in front of us around AI adoption and AI agents in the enterprise is going to be something that our existing systems cannot handle. And as a thought experiment, I mean, some of you run fairly large companies. Let's say you're running a 5,000 person company and you have 10% attrition. You're dealing with around 500 employees coming and going throughout the year. Your systems can handle giving each of those people an identity, getting them into your systems, giving them access to whatever they need to do their jobs. And we're approaching an environment where you're going to be required to hire 1 million people tomorrow. They're not people, but they're AI agents, right? So you're going to have 1 million unpredictable entities in your systems that you're going to have to hire. And the turnover is not 10%, it's actually 100%, and it's not per annum, it's per day. So these ephemeral agents are coming and going, millions of them in your systems every day. And now you need a system to figure out, how do I give each one of these things an identity? And how do I give each of these things a permission to do the bare limited thing it needs to do, right? Not only what database it can access, what cell in that database or what row in that database it can access, what column, and then those permissions are gone. And so all of that is brand new stuff. Like we are not prepared to deal with that currently. We have older systems to deal with human scale. We're now going to be approaching AI agent scale.
So agents right now are interacting with like infrastructure on absolutely different speed, and how organizations should rethink how they maintain the trust and the control over this infrastructure. So what they can do right now, so as this technology already is spreading.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this is emerging. Again, I go back to kind of the last major wave, which was the adoption of the cloud, and public cloud and private clouds and multi-cloud environments. And out of that wave of technology came a new paradigm around security, one of which was zero trust, right? So what happened was we had a data center in our basement of our company. Before the cloud, we could have a secure perimeter. We made sure we knew who came into that perimeter and who left the perimeter. With the adoption of cloud, now that perimeter dissolved. And then we had COVID, and it dissolved even further as our employees went everywhere and worked remotely. And so we had to develop a new framework, and that framework is called Zero Trust. And out of that framework, we had 3 major principles. One was verify explicitly. So because you have entities in your environment that you're not sure if they should be there or not, because there's no perimeter that is strong enough to keep them out, we had to make sure we always verifying explicitly. Second of all, we had to make sure that we're giving least privileged authorizations to all those entities. So again, as someone wants to access the database, you give them access to that database, and then they no longer have access to it. And then finally, you assume a breach. Because again, the perimeter is dissolved. It's no longer trustworthy. So now you just have to make sure that you're containing the blast radius of what's happening in your environment. So all of those things are more important in a world of AI. So we have to extend those concepts even further. So something like verify explicitly in a world of an AI agent now means you need to enforce constantly, right? And so An AI agent needs to be contained. It needs to be in something like a virtual machine or another container that it cannot break out of. And once you have that AI agent in that container that it cannot break out of, you need to apply permissions that that thing can do, right? Because an AI agent's incentive is to get the job done. And so it will do whatever it can to get that job done without some type of containment. Once you give it the permissions, you now have, as I mentioned before, millions of these things in your system. Now, there's no IT administrator that's going to be able to say, okay, give this agent access to a database because there's millions of them, and they're asking for requests all the time at a scale that is much faster than a human can react to, right? So now we need some kind of consensus around what is right and wrong, and it's probably something like a multi-agent consensus, maybe something we can learn from like blockchain or other technologies, where there is a consensus that is actually managed by AI agents. And then finally, the assuming breach is more like, let's assume that there's definitively a breach because we've actually somewhat kind of deployed the breach within our systems, right? We have all these unpredictable things going around our systems. So there definitely is a breach, and we need to make sure that we're monitoring it in different ways than we used to. And so as far as like the adoption of that currently, most of this is evolving. I think at the forefront right now is the containment mechanism. So there are ways to deploy agents and VMs and make sure that those VMs have the appropriate permissions, and we can contain what the AI agent can do. I don't think a lot of companies are doing that yet, but the technology is there. And then the two other items around, consensus-based privilege access or intent-based privilege access is emerging as well. And then the monitoring and detection is really kind of just emerging, and we're on the forefront of that, of how do we monitor at a scale that humans were never prepared to deal with.
Thank you, Taylor. We have discussed right now how the securing of the system from enterprise perspectives look like. But from threat landscape, how the adoption of AI is changing the threats which organizations and governments are facing right now.
We're currently working on a project with Airbus, for example, for access control in their airplanes, because they want to control the data flow between the airplane and when they actually land and during the downtime. And actually, at the end, it's about consumers continuing their Netflix series when they're on the plane, but this data has to be exchanged when the planes land. So they need access control. They need zero trust environments. This also focuses on the people who are allowed into the plane, or somebody could be allowed into the cockpit, but he's not allowed to fly the Airbus 320. So you need all these kind of levels of access controls for systems, and I think the more they become digitalized, the more they also become vulnerable. So we're trying to build new measures that will last against an attack. But on the other side, also the physical infrastructure. So the connectivity part, I think, is a very important part that we. As an eco association, we are also owner of the DKIX, the largest internet exchange, and we see that lots of companies, they're going towards direct fiber connections and away from internet protocols, because most of the attacks they happen through or they use the internet protocols. So the way is to connect their production facilities or their company entities through direct fiber connections, for example.
And if being practical, what organizations should rethink in how they should change the way they protect themselves to properly address the changed threat landscape?
I think, especially in Germany, a lot of there are many companies that are obliged to do this by the critics because they're part of this critical infrastructure. So they have to live up to higher security measures than by law, basically, or they're obliged to. But I think on the other hand, also our production companies, like car manufacturing companies, that they wanna connect their production facilities. For example, they create risks. Also, they create opportunities when they do cloud manufacturing and these kind of things. But also they become vulnerable. So they have to use this opportunity, but also at the same time they will be vulnerable to attacks, of course.
Thank you. And so the anthropic fable precedent demonstrated pretty well that the access to the infrastructure you don't control could be easily revoked from one side, and from another side, building sovereignty takes time and significant investments. So looking at the Europe today, so what and how Europe should do to compete on the frontier and in the same time developing its sovereignty?
Yeah, one thing that I just mentioned is one project that we are doing at the moment. It's about multi-cloud providers scenarios and building SLAs for these kind of sovereign scenarios where you could actually provide a service by, for example, a German cloud company, a French like OVH or Ionos and Orange could provide one service together. Like for example, you could call it cloud roaming, like we already have when you're using your mobile and you get off the plane in Spain. But this, for example, for autonomous driving, you need these kind of services, and they have to be connected by SLAs, and they need contracts. So these companies can provide a service that's working via Europe, basically. And on the other hand, I'm here for the Center of Sovereign AI in Germany, that we're just starting with the German AI Association, and that's about starting to build our own models, especially in the industrial models. And we've been working on that for, I think, since 2022, when GPT-3 actually was publicized for the first time, and we talked a lot of to the Ministry of Economics that we need AI infrastructure to really make the next step, also make a step in Europe or in Germany. But it was a really hard and long way to now we actually managed to get some funding for a project like this in North Rhine-Westphalia, and we're going to build a center for sovereign AI in Hürth that's very close to Cologne, and it's part of an area that's currently transformed from a coal mining area into the next decade of digital value creation, basically. And that's where we're going to build this center together with Joerg, who was supposed to be here today, who couldn't come. And we've just started onboarding some partners that are going to support us. These are Audi and Siemens Energy, German Telecom, and also two small and medium enterprises, IABG, which is a security company basically, and Materna. And we are looking for more partners. So we have already onboarded 5 partners, and we're looking for more. And we got funding, 130 million funding from the Ministry of Economics in North Rhine-Westphalia to do this. So if there's somebody who wants to join our project, please feel free to talk to me later.
Taylor, so from your perspective,
Yeah, I mean, so I'm from the US, and it's been kind of enlightening being here. There seems to be a lot of concern around sovereignty, and I think for good reason. I really like Dr. Fay's explanation of the stack, right? And it goes from power all the way to application. I think at the top of the stack, you can make up ground fairly quickly because you have developers of open source models out of China and elsewhere that are getting to be the capabilities of some of the closed source US models. And then you can build applications quickly on top of that. I think where, from a sovereignty perspective, the real concern should be kind of closer to the bottom, where you need to build power. That takes a long time. You need to support neo-clouds that are aligned to your interests as a nation. And some of that may require alliance building, but as we all know, alliances change and global politics are dynamic. And so really the only way to protect yourself is to own the whole stack within a nation. And so I think that's critically important. I think, the other perspective that I've gotten here is not only the concern, but the fact that there's this understanding that you're behind the US and Asia. And I think that's good. I mean, I think from my perspective, taking off my kind of American bias, what I would like to see is really even adoption of AI across the globe. I think that's critically important. We don't want one nation running away with all of the productivity and the power that comes from that. We want, if you think back to kind of the nuclear mutually assured destruction that actually kept the world as it is through this competition between the US and the Soviets. I'd like to see something akin to that, like a mutually assured intelligence, right? Where there's a level of intelligence that's evenly spread across the globe that creates productivity for all, and there isn't one entity that just kind of rises above the others with this advanced technology. So, I mean, I agree with a lot of the sentiment here. You need to, in my mind, reduce regulations, increase investment, and move faster.
Thank you very much. I hope Europe will get the proper sparring partner to the US and Asia. And I think it's a good point to stop here. And if there are any questions from the audience, probably we'll be glad to answer them. So.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, it's continuing via this Fastest project, which is about actually connecting different cloud entities and creating services that can be used throughout Europe. That's basically the next step to really put these principles into practice and create some real life value for companies that want to collaborate on a European level. And so we need SLAs, we need all these, the contracting, but you also need the data exchange has to be secured by these agreements that we are working on currently.
Any other question? We have a microphone so we can record them too. Well, if there's no other question, I would like to thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.